Hi 11, it's Mr. Lloyd here. Obviously we'd love to be teaching you today, but due to circumstances we're not. So what we've done is we've put together a lesson on Macbeth. I know you're all at different stages with the play. I know some people have been watching the kind of film version and highlighting and going through kind of key scenes or the scenes one by one. I know some people have done a little bit more analysis. I know different classes have done different things and be at slightly different stages, and that's absolutely fine. For today we'll kind of take that into account. I'm going to spend about 20 minutes, 25 minutes let's say, going through an essay question, and then I'm going to give you the rest of this lesson to write that essay question up, so to turn those notes into a kind of a full essay really, because we would like to have done a KIP on Macbeth with you. I know you've done your trial exams in weeks 2 and 3, and obviously it's been a while. It's been about 3 or 4 weeks since we've actually done, in some cases, some essay writing for literature, so it's important to get those skills back up because we're going to be doing a KIP after half term. I think some classes will probably plan to do it this half term as well, so we're going to look at this essay plan and use this as a means of kind of seeing how you get on with your essay writing. And to be honest, in year 11 it's good to get your skills of writing up as best as they can be really. So this is the question I've prepared, and I've used the exact same stems you'll get in the exam. I've prepared an answer in true Blue Peter style. Obviously I'll put this, I'll take a screenshot of this so you can see it clearly, and we'll get that shared with you on Teams. Question is, starting with this extract, which is Act 1 Scene 1, explore how write about how Shakespeare presents the witches in this extract, how Shakespeare presents the supernatural in the play as a whole. You can copy that question down. I've highlighted the key words, which is supernatural. Supernatural in Macbeth terms is basically anything that is not of the normal world of man really. And the extract is Act 1 Scene 1, so we talk about the witches, but also consider the supernatural in the play as a whole as well. So you might not have your copy of Macbeth, but I've done some things to help you out with this. I've given you some quotations you can talk about. Obviously you're welcome to pick anything different to what I've got here, that's absolutely fine. But looking at Act 1 Scene 1, first of all, with Act 1 Scene 1, this is exactly what I do in the exam. Remember, they'll give you an extract. It's only because of technology we've not given you this extract. If you haven't got your copy of Macbeth, you can find this text online as well. And obviously if you're writing up your answers, you try if you can and write it by hand. To develop your writing speed and kind of muscle strength even as writers, because it has been a while, particularly with kind of not being able to do as many KIPs during lockdown this at the start of the year. But obviously if you want to type it on Word, that's absolutely fine at the end of the lesson. So I've just highlighted anything that stands out to me. I've got thunder and lightning, this idea of the terrible weather suggesting the evil to come. It's repeated. This idea, the witches seeing war as a game, life as a game. The one I'm going to talk about though is fair is foul and foul is fair. This idea is a key theme in the play. So what I've done here, I don't want you to get too sidetracked. First of all, I've made a point that in this extract, Shakespeare presents the witches as a metaphor for society in the play and Jacobean Britain as a whole. This idea that Shakespeare is using the witches and this fair is foul and foul is fair line to make the point that things in society may appear to be fair and good, but actually they kind of, they mask this sense of evil underneath them as well. Anything in red, what I've done is blue, is I've put kind of what Shakespeare does. This is kind of how he does it, and then in green it's been lagging a little bit, so hopefully it'll kind of catch up in a minute. Fair is foul and foul is fair. First of all, we've got idea, just defining our words. Fair is morally good. If you're a fair person, you believe in justice and order and you apply justice and order. Foul, on the other hand, goes against order, foul behaviour, this idea is hideous and evil. And it says in your books it's a paradox, this idea that society and people can be both fair and foul, or good and evil in Macbeth and in society as a whole. And if you think about just how foul some of the actions are in Macbeth, the gruesome murders in the novel, is this idea that, in the play, this idea that characters who appear to be fair, Macbeth appears to be fair, no, but fair, it's foul as the play goes on. As a structural or kind of form point of view, iambic pentameter, this idea of the way the play is written, which with 10 syllables per line broken up into 5 feet of 2 syllables, and it tells you a little bit more in the Shakespeare's verse section in your copy of Macbeth. The stress falls on fair and foul as kind of monosyllabic words to further emphasise these ideas, to further emphasise almost the anger, or the kind of evil, I suppose it's said with, by the witches. And why? Well, this idea, people who appear fair in the play Macbeth are not all they seem. Witches are evil. Witchcraft was a crime at the time, we know, so it creates this kind of sense of anger towards the witches and anyone who believes in them. And we've got this idea of kind of Macbeth and Lady Macbeth, I'll just abbreviate them there. And this idea, it's a criticism potentially of Jacobean society. Jacobean society just means the time of King James. This idea, people who appear fair may be foul, maybe the king himself. That people who have fair means may appear to be foul. And if you look back at your home learning video, when we looked at the context to Macbeth, the historical context, there was a lot going on. The gunpowder plot is around this time. People who may appear to be, being supportive of King James are actually kind of evil underneath. And you don't have to mention, context or ideas. The why is never a bolt on it. So it's kind of a detailed discussion of some ideas rather than just a little history lesson there as well. Now, this is one of those questions where I would probably just make one point about the extract. You could talk about the thunder and lightning or the other kind of war is a game thing, but I think I've got quite a nice point there for fair is foul and foul is fair. We probably want you to do 4 in the exam. I've done 3 in this video, and you could do another one as well. So I'm going to go to the play as a whole, and let's have a little look through here as we're going through. So thinking about characters at the start, we've got kind of Act 1, Scene 2, we've got Duncan. There'll be a video annotating key quotations in Act 1 for your home learning this week, so don't worry too much about this. It's not too much about supernatural. The witches are in again as well, and you could perhaps have the all hail and the repetition of hail and how that appeals to Macbeth's ego. But I'm going to go for Act 1, Scene 5. I think it's quite a key scene, and the one I'm going to use is this idea where Macbeth pledges loyalty to Duncan. Then he's told that Malcolm's going to be king, and then Macbeth becomes murderous and he has these black and deep desires. And these black and deep desires here, I put Shakespeare presents Macbeth as a character easily influenced by the supernatural to show the fallibility of man, to show that even a noble man at the start like Macbeth, who is praised by Duncan, could argue that Duncan's as valuable as a king because he repeatedly makes bad character judgments throughout the play. But man is valuable because if you show man power and you say, look, you've got to do something bad to get that power, Macbeth shows, or Shakespeare shows through Macbeth, that that's what man will do. So what we got here, quotations, black and deep desires. Black and deep desires here are the desires for murder of Duncan and the throne. But he's just pledged loyalty to Duncan in Act 1, Scene 5. So this idea that he's appearing to be fair to Duncan, but actually he's got these foul desires underneath. This idea of the blackness, I've not put that in here, the depths to which Macbeth will have to go to find a way to kill Duncan. This idea of blackness in his soul, he's becoming evil, his foul nature, and is that foul? I think I've just lagged a little bit, so I'll wait for you to catch up. Is that jealousy of Malcolm, Malcolm becoming king? Is it part of his lust or desire for power? People often think of Macbeth as a guilty character in the play, and he is guilty to an extent. He does things and his kind of guilt will have an impact on him. But it's quite interesting to think about this actually. What Macbeth is doing here is realising what he will have to do to become king. He has to become evil. He has to look deep within himself to his deep desires to find a way to kill Duncan. Duncan is a good man and a good king, and Macbeth is the opposite of this. And also, we talk about this idea he's going to have to kind of overleap the great chain of being as well. He's going to have to find a way deep within himself to overcome Duncan, but also just to murder somebody who has been good to him as well. This idea that requires a depth of personality or character, but also a depth of kind of soul searching really to find the necessary things to do that. Murdering people doesn't come naturally. It's a kind of often an evil response, and Macbeth has to change himself as a character to do this, and he's driven by power, showing how man can fall, a bit like Victor Frankenstein. Shows the lengths Macbeth and perhaps other monarchs will go to get and keep power, and also drop my pen. And also this idea that he's got to kind of overcome the great chain of being there as well. This idea that he has got to, he mentions in Act 1 Scene 5, overleap the great chain of being to get this power as well. And it foreshadows his descent into evil, which continues throughout the play as the blackness overtakes his soul. And obviously he's met with a kind of a tragic end and a gruesome end at the end. So that's Macbeth in Act 1 Scene 5. And I think it's hard not to talk about Lady Macbeth if you get a question on the supernatural, because although she is a woman, she embraces the supernatural and evil in a way that, for instance, isn't befitting perhaps of a woman of her time. And I think you need to be careful with Lady Macbeth. She does go against the expectations of women at the time, but not necessarily where she's challenging Macbeth or be the man, art without ambition, you're too full of the milk of human kindness, you're too weak, because she's an ambitious woman. She is, married to the Thane of Glamis. Macbeth is Thane of Glamis at the start of the at the start of the play, and yet she's allowed to be ambitious. She's allowed to want better things for herself, because as a woman she has made the decision to marry Macbeth to try and get as much power as she can from that. But this scene in Act 1 Scene 5 on page 15, she oversteps that mark and kind of subverts those traditional gender stereotypes. So there's loads of things you could pick out here. The point I've made is here, Shakespeare shows how Lady Macbeth has been seduced by power and uses her belief in the supernatural her belief in the supernatural to show how her character goes against, but a much better word, subverts gender stereotypes. There's lots of quotations you could use here. We could have the kind of the unsex me here, remove kind of gender. You could have crown to toe, direst cruelty, passage to remorse, take my milk for gall. That's the one I'm going to use. You could have the dunnest smoke of hell. There's lots of rich imagery to do with evil here, but the one I've chosen is milk for gall, and I've chosen milk for gall because milk obviously is referred to on the previous page. Macbeth is too full of the milk of human kindness. He's too kind. She wants to be the opposite to her weak husband, which perhaps challenges what we'd expect of gender stereotypes at the time. Milk being linked to childbirth, this idea of childbirth as a gift from God. She'd rather poison her child with gall, than kind of to get power. And this idea that she's swapping purity for poison, really. Gall, obviously, we know is produced in your gallbladder. It's quite acidic. It's poison, basically, here. And these are all showing the lengths that Lady Macbeth would go to get power, really, here. And why does Shakespeare do that? Well, he does that. It's a patriarchal society. Macbeth is Lady Macbeth's best chance of social advancement. She wants to be free of his weakness to gain power. It's her ambition as a woman. She's willing to subvert gender stereotypes to gain power. It shows the depth of her ambition. She almost kind of sells her soul to the devil in this scene for power, and in a desperate bid to keep power as well. Think about kind of what else she does as the kind of play develops. And I suppose you could possibly link it into the ending here as well, or her ending in the novel. Is this kind of some sense of justice done for a woman subverting expectations of the time? Thinking ahead to Lady Macbeth's death. I know we haven't done that in the play. I don't think anyone's got up to that point yet. But thinking ahead to that, is the fact that she dies punishments by God, by some kind of higher power? Is this a sense of expectations of the Jacobean era, but not also subverting those gender expectations, going so far beyond what we'd expect of a woman and becoming evil in order to gain power? And there's lots of kind of wider discussions to perhaps have about that from there, and whether Lady Macbeth is kind of right or wrong, how an audience would respond to her character throughout the play as well. So what we've done there is I'll put a screenshot of this on the system so you can see what it looks like. What we're going to get you to do, it's taken about 15 minutes this video, so you can see this and work through. What we'd like you to do is turn it into an essay. So you've got 1, 2, 3 paragraphs. That's probably going to be enough to write. In the exam we'd like you to do 4, so if you could think of maybe a 4th paragraph there that you'd add to that, thinking about how the supernatural has been used. We only really expect you to go up to, let's say, about Act 2. I know a lot of people have kind of are on Act 2, maybe some of you have kind of read ahead of Act 2, but I don't think anyone's really up to Act 3 yet, and if you are, you could use details from that. So just try and turn this into an essay, and then when you're kind of handing in the assignment for this lesson, hand this in to us and we'll have a little look at them. We're probably going to use this as a means of getting you ready for the KIP after half term, because we've got to kind of keep on top of these essays, so kind of work through it there. We'll have a little look, we'll kind of let you know what you've not done, or done well, and perhaps need to improve for next time. And then obviously when we're doing the KIP, which will probably be after half term, that's when we can kind of look at these essays. But it's just a chance for you to develop your analysis skill. I know from looking at the trial exams, I know we did Frankenstein and we did poetry, but for instance, language analysis I know was something that a lot of teachers have mentioned that people are missing out, and really looking and words in detail, analysing in fair and foul in detail, or blackness and deep, in this idea of milk and gall, just really looking at those quotations, and also making sure why does Shakespeare do this? Context isn't just a one sentence bolt on there as well. So obviously your teachers will be available during the lesson, so if you want to get in touch with us during the lesson, with the time we'd have had you, that's absolutely fine. Just send us a message on Teams. I'll put this on Teams, an English teacher will have a copy so they can share it with you as well. If you want to get in touch with me, that's absolutely fine through Teams if you've got any questions while you're writing this. But what we want you to do now is spend the rest of this lesson time turning these notes into an essay. If you need some sentence starters, we can put some on Teams for you, but just try and have a go and see what you can do. These are the points, you've got these word for word, but it's now thinking about how these kind of words and how language is used there to kind of create the supernatural, or the effects of the supernatural in Macbeth as well there. And obviously we don't expect you to talk about the ending yet, because we've not done that. We're not really up to the middle of the play yet either, so don't worry too much about getting too far ahead. It's just looking at the start, because that will help you when it comes to the KIP after half term. So get in touch with us if you need us, and obviously these resources will be on Teams so you can see them. And if you haven't got your copy of Macbeth, it is available online, so you'll be able to kind of find bits of the extract there as well.